What's up you guys? My name is Angela and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I actually have for you guys a continuation video off of the last video. It is January 2nd, 2020 and it's been exactly 1 month since all of these dramatic things have happened in my life. And I just want to kind of sit down and reflect on everything that had happened. So I left off in the last video the day that she coded. I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit to kind of get into the whole story of her coding. My mom originally was supposed to go home that morning. I believe it was a Tuesday morning. She was supposed to go home. The surgical residents were doing their rounds. They came in, they spoke with me, and they asked me, the one surgical resident, I can't remember his name, and I really wish I could because he was amazing. He came in and he examined my mom, you know, and he was like really excited to send her home. She had been there for a very long time already. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Do you think that she's ready to go home?" And as much as I wanted to say yes, send her home, I want her home right now, like I just want it to be me and my mom, I want to be out of this hospital, I said no. I was like, I don't think she's ready to go home. And he asked me why, and I said, because she can't even sleep. Like, she tries to sleep sitting up because it hurts her when she sits down, and then her body just gives out and she then falls to her side when she's asleep, I guess. But typically after a few minutes, her body's in so much pain from laying down, it just shoots back up, and then she kind of just like sleeps standing up, kind of wavering back and forth. So I said no. And so I can't remember, I think it was, I don't remember what the scan was, but it was a smaller scan. I think it was an MRI. That he was going to schedule, and so she was going to go eat breakfast and then have that scan later in the afternoon. Well, he came back a little while later and decided that he just wanted to do a full body scan, so he ordered a CT, and her breakfast was on the way, and unfortunately he said you can't eat it, which made me very sad because ultimately the last meal that my mom had was the night before, and then she never ate again, which I'm very, very sad about. Food is such a big thing in our culture, in any culture, I guess, really, but specifically the Filipino culture, food is such a big thing, such a comfort. While they were prepping her for that, it was gonna happen right away. They actually found like a little space of time to do it in. So my aunt and I left to go get like a mid-morning breakfast, I guess. It was kind of like 10 a.m., like 9 to 10 a.m. So we left, allowed my mom to rest, and yada yada yada. We came back to the room, and my mom was sitting in her chair, and we asked the nurse, we were like, why is my mom still in here? And she said that when my mom went to the CT, they had her laying flat, and she panicked, and she could not like move or she could not like lay still or anything. She just was full-blown panicking. And so they took her out and they gave her some Ativan and brought her back to the room to let that kind of sink in. I think they gave her something else, but I can't remember what it was. And just to relax her, and they scheduled it for another CT for later in the day. My aunt and I believe, left the room again because we wanted my mom to rest. She was so exhausted. So we let her rest, and I kind of just, we went to the healing gardens, I think, whatever. And we came back and she was gone from the room, and I was getting ready to sit down and do some homework because I was still doing all my classwork, and my aunt, I think, was like playing like games on her phone or something. About 2 minutes into sitting down, a man walks into the room, and he looked at me and he said, "Are you Angela?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "There's just been a situation. Your mom coded while she was in the CT machine, and they would like for you to come down." So my mom's a very religious person, so I went very quickly. I grabbed the rosary off the counter. It was her rosary, and you know, we kind of took the back way to the CT machine. Obviously it was an unauthorized area for personnel who don't have an ID, but they took me down that way, obviously. and I remember we were walking up to the CT machine, and the CT machine, which is weird, it was not how I imagined it to be. Totally not important, but it just wasn't how I had imagined a CT machine, like the surrounding area to look like. But we walked up. There was a lot of doctors outside of the room. There was a lot of doctors in the room, like running in and out of the room. I want to say there was a good like 15 to 20 people. A lot of people with a lot of machines on standby. Just every single person was there. They were kind of talking to us, and the chaplain was trying to keep me calm, just asking about my life, stuff like that. And someone finally asked, "Do you want to go see your mom?" And I said, "Yeah." So my aunt and I walked over to go look at my mom, and what I saw was chaos. Like, the doctors weren't chaos, but the scene was chaos. There was like opened wrappers, I assume for like the EKG monitors that they stick onto a body. I believe that's what those wrappers were for. There was probably several different wrappers for 7 different things that were just spewed out all over the ground. My mom was naked when I walked into the room, which was something I wasn't expecting, but as soon as we walked up to the room, they were like, "There's family here, cover her up." So just shortly after we had walked over there, they covered her up. They finally had gotten her stable. When we walked down there, they were working on getting her stable, and they finally did, and that's when they let us kind of go and walk and see her. And so what we did was we backed up. They were taking her to the ICU. And I remember as they were wheeling her out of the CT room, I remember her body looked very, very swollen, which is weird. I haven't studied too much about any medical things, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I didn't know if that was a side effect of, you know, compressions, just your body trying to reactivate itself, I guess. So I remember her just being very swollen, and I remember seeing her tongue out of her mouth and hanging off to the side. It was very, very scary. You can kind of see it in the last video I did with the intubation tubes. You can kind of see it. But they did have to intubate her in the CT machine when she coded. They were taking us up to the ICU. My mom went up the elevator first. The surgical resident finally arrived, and he was panicked. He was like, "What happened? Like, I was supposed to send this woman home today. Why did she code? What happened?" And there was a group of people, I think nurses maybe or something, talking like loud, not loudly, but like loud enough for people to hear in the corner. And the surgical resident walked up and he said, "You need to be quiet, there's family here." And the chaplain was like asking me about my major, just questions to keep my mind occupied, something that wasn't on my mom. And I couldn't focus. I was so jittery, which I can't even explain to you. I had to take an Ativan as well that day. I was actually prescribed Ativan while I was at the hospital because my heart rate while I was resting, I think got up to like 140 something, and I was actually rushed to the emergency room, and that was the day after I had got the news about the cancer. And I think I just had time to think about it all, and so I got sent to the emergency room. They put me on a gurney in my mom's room. My mom woke up and saw me on the gurney, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like, what is happening?" And everyone's just like, "It's okay, Angela's going to the emergency room, like, she's gonna be fine." And my mom was full on panicked when she saw that happening. But anyways, I went to the emergency room. They took all my vitals and essentially prescribed me lorazepam, Ativan, whatever you want to call it. It was specifically Ativan. So I had to take one of those that day because I was like full on, like, I couldn't stop like nodding my head, which is a really weird thing to say. We got to the ICU. You kind of saw some of the footage of the nurse running in and out, trying to make sure all the machines were hooked up correctly, watching her vitals, trying to make sure she was like completely stable before I went back into the room. I remember the surgical resident walked over and kind of explained the situation to us. He was like, "We don't know what happened. We don't know why she coded, but we're in the process of running some tests right now. He just kind of wanted to give us a quick update the first time around. And I looked at him in the eye and I said, "How long was she down?" And he said 20 minutes, but they started compressions right away, which was probably the best thing that the perfect thing that I needed to hear, because always, always, always start with compressions. You never want there to be a moment where the heart stops pumping blood and oxygen to the brain, around your body, yada, medical stuff that I haven't had the chance to learn yet, but anyways, so all that happened, and I was like, okay, good, they started compressions right away, but 20 minutes is still a very long time to be down. So he went back, he was running the test, he was looking at what scan that they did get. They did almost get like a complete scan before my mom had coded. So he was kind of studying those. He couldn't see anything wrong with those, and he was like, what is happening? Like, why did she... He was so confused. And then probably about an hour later, she was finally stabilized, and he came back and he pulled us into a room, and he said all of the tests were coming back normal. He couldn't figure out in that moment what was wrong, and that they're going to continue to do more tests and try and figure out what's happening. But he was like, she's not in the best shape, and they don't know what's going to happen. And this whole thing was crazy because I had just signed power of attorney forms the night before. Like, I legit signed power of attorney forms with my mom, completely lucid and awake, the night before. And so this was all crazy. I was like, my mom said we were going to talk about this when we got home because we thought we were going to go home today, and I was like, I'm not ready, I don't know what's happening. I was panicking in my head. We started to talk to the doctor more, or not the doctor, the surgical resident more, and then he looked at me and he was like, "Are you a med student?" And I was like, "No, not a med student." And he was like, He was like very intrigued as to why I wasn't a med student, but I guess I knew so much. I don't know. In my opinion, 3.5 weeks is a very long time to be in the hospital, and it's a very long time to sit there and study stats and vitals and listening to what the nurses and the doctors are saying, kind of like connecting dots, and that's kind of what my brain just naturally does. It puts a lot of puzzle pieces together naturally. It's instinct for me. So that was kind of the entire story leading up into the point where she coded. In my next video, I will actually be talking about the time from when we arrived in the ICU to when we decided palliative care. So yeah, stay tuned for that video. I hope you guys kind of like this journey. I want to film this kind of just for myself as well. I want to be able to look back on this, and like I said, I like to analyze things in depth a lot, and this whole thing is kind of just my coping mechanism. And my mom, you know, was 3.5 weeks from diagnosis to passing, and I need this to kind of work through everything. So yeah, please stay tuned for the next couple videos, because since today is January 2nd, 2020, and exactly 1 month from traumatic events, I actually went back to UNMC Omaha, the hospital, and I went ice skating. They have a new ice skating rink that's open. So I went ice skating at the hospital. What did I do? I ate lunch there, I got dessert, we kind of just wandered around, went to the healing gardens, so that footage will kind of be in a later video, but I hope you guys are enjoying this. As always, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell if you want to be notified of the next time that I upload a video. And please, 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 I am begging you, share this with all of your family and friends. My mom's story is so incredibly important to me, and this type of cancer really, really, really needs to be talked about. And traumatic events like this, I think, need to be talked about between people, because I feel like people don't talk enough about these situations, and we need to. So yeah, please share this video, and I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching.